Hi, you guys. Welcome back to my show, Hosting Heaven podcast. My name is Gabrielle Burton, and I am a Christian licensed marriage and family therapist with 10 years' experience in the field, specializing in narcissistic and spiritual abuse. And I am also the author of the book, The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Gold Digger, Discovering the Hidden Treasures Within. It combines biblical and mental health principles to help you dive deeper into your relationships with God, yourself, and others. You can get your copy in the link below. Today, I am so excited for the guest that I have with me today. This is Norma Urrabazo.
Hey.
She is just such a dear friend and also my spiritual mom.
Yes.
Known her for many, many years.
For a long
And so,
time.
yes, and so I'm just really excited to just be able to have this conversation with you today. I want you to kind of just introduce yourself to the audience, and we're just going
Yeah,
to talk a little bit about our relationship and
absolutely.
just ministry.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me. Really, really awesome that we could put this on the schedule and make it happen.
yeah,
So I've known you for a very long time, since you were a young girl. My
yeah,
name is Norma, obviously, and I am, I'm a pastor, but I'm also, an apostolic leader. I'm a
yeah.
prophetic person that loves to spread the love of the Lord, the word of God throughout to this nation and to the nations of the world. Like, really, we
Hmm.
are called to communities,
Yeah.
in our spheres. Like, it's very important that we know the purpose and the calling that the Lord has created for us, and also understand that in different seasons that the shifting happens, and that the Lord speaks to you to shift you into different directions, to different places, to different nations, and you have to be ready and willing
Hmm.
to just go with whatever God is telling you to do.
So good.
So I've been a pastor in
Hmm.
this community for many, many years.
Hmm.
That's where we met.
Yep.
And then also the Lord transitioned us, and, and our call has shifted to the nations, which is really an amazing thing. But
Hmm.
it's really beautiful for me to see and to watch, like, daughters like you grow up and really bloom and blossom and develop into what God created you to be, and release your voice, and in knowing, like, who you are as a
Hmm.
woman of God and a woman of destiny. It's, for me, I think it's one of the greatest pleasures of being a pastor, but also being a friend and a spiritual mom to you and to so many others that I know are watching, like, and are
Yeah.
here with us today. Um, but I think that, you know, me and developing in my identity and what God has done in my life through the many years of ministry is
Hmm.
something that maybe we could talk about today, because I think
Yeah.
that sometimes when you start in a particular place, it's easy to just kind of get stuck there.
Mm.
And, as God is constantly growing us, and He's the Lord that is so creative, right? And He doesn't stop creating just because you get into a particular position, or into a particular place, or into a particular pulpit or nation, or, even on a podcast. Like, God is
Right.
still creating. And so in His very nature, that is who He is. He's a creator. And sometimes I think we're the ones that kind of get comfortable in
Yeah.
an environment or in a place, and get stuck. And the Lord is, like, constantly trying to stretch us
Mm.
and trying to lead us into new things. And so I feel like, for me to say that I'm just a pastor, it's not really, I love being a pastor, but I'm also not that person anymore that
Yeah.
fits into a particular role, but I've developed into more things. And I've had to come to a place where I had to accept that about myself and feel confident in the call that the Lord has
Wow.
put upon my life. So I think as I see the sons and daughters develop in their own call and their
Hmm.
own identity, I'm like, yeah, look, this is awesome. This is what I want more than anything for myself, but this is what I want more than anything for those that I am in a relationship with. So,
Oh, I love
yeah, I don't know if I
that.
answered the question. I feel like I went all over the
No, that was
place.
beautifully
Yeah.
said. I think, I mean, it's so funny because as you speak, it's like, duh, I'm your daughter. You can see that, you can see the relationship there. You can see kind of just the fruit. I really would
Yeah.
say that. I mean, yeah, the house that we grew up under was very much like you raise and then
Yes.
you release. What was
Release.
the
It was reach,
uh-huh,
reconcile,
uh-huh,
raise, and release.
release?
And
Yeah.
I think for me, like, I very much felt the daughter of the house when I was on staff at a church for 25 years,
Yeah.
almost 25 years. I'm
Yeah.
like maybe a little bit shy of 25, but obviously I was 25 and then some. And so that was our thing: reach, reconcile, raise, and release. And I think that I felt very much like in my own life when I was in that position, in that place where I could see myself, the progression of my life in the seasons of reach, in the seasons where I was reconciled. But I think that that's
Mm,
a process that doesn't just stop when you've, oh, I'm being released. Like, released to what? Like,
yeah.
that's not just like a one and done. Like,
Yeah.
I love that because it was like, this is a constant thing that we should always be challenging ourselves in. You don't
Right.
always, like I said, you don't stop being reconciled. You're
Right.
reconciled at different seasons, in different ways, and in different levels, and in different, there's a depth to the way the Lord leads us and heals us, so this is not a model that you can just, say, I'm done. I've been released. I'm out. It's like, no, this is a place where you're constantly,
Yeah.
in this mode. But this is the part of, like, like a healthy parenting that you would say, because, I'm not the person that wants just to kind of keep my daughters in the house and locking them in like Rapunzel. Like, no, it's like, I want you to go and do, and what more, and what's God saying,
Yeah.
and what did you hear? And so, like, when you send me a text, like, about a specific situation in your life, I don't want to just give you a thumbs up on the emoji thing, and it's like, thumbs up, you're awesome. And it's like, okay, like, what does that mean? So I actually said, no, I want to have a conversation about this.
Yeah.
And I, the next day, we talked, and I was like, what does that mean? What are you hearing? What do you mean? Well, what about this? What about that? So as a spiritual mom, or as a parent, a person in your life that wants you to reach your greatest potential,
Yeah.
I want to draw that out of you, and I don't want to just, I'm not going to tell you what to do,
Yeah.
because I'm also not that person. I'm not going to. You have to search that out and find that for your
Yeah.
life. So yeah, very, very,
Yeah.
very important to have a healthy kind of relationship,
Yeah.
and when we're actually growing in the Lord.
I love that you said that because I feel like, I feel like people often are wondering what kind of relationship should they have, either with their pastors or their spiritual leaders. And I have had a lot of people share conversations about their pastors are unreachable or untouchable. And it kind of breaks my heart a bit just because I feel like there should be some type of relationship formed. Obviously, it's not going to be to the extent where, they're able to call them constantly or
Yeah.
anything like that. But that relationship should be defined and it also should be secure, knowing that, yeah, when I do reach out to you, you're going to ask more questions or you are going to be more involved or more invested. What do you think people, how do people find those people in their lives? Should that be their pastor? Should they find other people outside the church? Like, what does that look like?
I think that, just really, I mean, always feel like our number one model for that is the Bible.
Yeah.
Because I think when you go to the Word, you can find so many examples of different types of relationships
Yeah.
and different types of situations where relationships are developed, and where developed and nurtured,
Mm-hmm.
and where God even does, where he does the pruning thing, you know what I mean? And or where he does a challenging thing, where he
Mm-hmm.
can, you see that in many times in the Gospels, where Jesus goes back to the disciples and brings in challenges and confronts, but then also, loving shows up and is
Yeah.
there for them in so many different ways. Like, I mean, even when he came to Peter's house and prayed for the mother-in-law. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, how many pastors actually do that now? Okay,
Yeah.
like, go to your house and pray for those of your loved ones because they care about what's going on in your life. So I think the main thing is, I mean, I want to really, really get you to a place where you realize, what kind of a house am I in? Because that's
Wow.
really
That's good.
important.
What kind
Because
of
I
house?
think sometimes we go to a big mega church, and we were, when I was pastoring my church, when it started, the church that I was on staff at, it was a small church,
Yeah.
and then it grew and grew and grew, and then we grew to multiple services and, mega church status. I think probably the first one in this community. I know there's many of them now in
Yeah.
Las Vegas, so which is awesome. I absolutely love that. But I think when you're in a particular house, you're in a smaller church that's more of a community church, you should have a certain type of expectation from your leadership,
I love that.
whether it's the senior leader, the senior pastor, whatever the structure is called, or somebody on the pastoral staff that you connect with.
Yeah.
And I think so when you're in a smaller church setting, it goes back to your expectation, but it also goes back to where you're at, right?
Yeah.
So, like, the model is usually really clear to see when you've been in churches, kind of how when you grow up in a church, you see the model and you kind of fit into that model. Oh,
Yeah.
go to the welcome center. Then you're going to get a call from the person that's in charge of small groups. Then that person, so as the more you grow in leadership, then the more, access you have to certain leaders and blah, blah, blah. I mean, every church has its own system. So don't think it doesn't. It does.
Totally,
Even in
totally.
a small church, you have a
Mm-hmm.
system. And so, but when you're in a larger church, so, again, like what kind of house are you in? And when you're in a larger
Yeah.
church, then there's different levels and different places, and then you can actually fit into like a small group setting, which I think is awesome because the small group leaders are pastors.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get so hung up on the fact that they're the small group leader or the associate pastor or the senior pastor. Why are you searching that one person that's at the top that's on the pulpit? So this is the challenge. What is your expectation? And
Yeah.
why are you trying to get so close to that one person? Like
Mm-hmm.
this mindset of having to reach the one, I
Yeah.
think goes back to like maybe some of our idolatry systems that we may have grown up in,
Yeah.
or maybe some of our needs that need to be met within the church structure that
Yeah.
perhaps we need to deal with in our own hearts.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to get preachy, but I think really it goes back to what is your expectation and why? Like
Mm-hmm.
ask yourself, what need in my life am I trying to have met
Mm-hmm.
by being with this one particular person? Because a lot of times the ones that are accessible to you, your leaders, your group leaders, your small group leaders, your youth pastors, associates, or whatever, they are probably just as pastoral or maybe not more so than the actual senior pastor.
Yeah.
And so I think really look around in your house and have a healthy expectation of what you
Mm-hmm.
want that leader to be in your
For
life.
sure. And I think too, like being able to have open communication, right? I think that the conversation should be able to be open and ongoing, right? From both sides. Because
Absolutely.
I think that, yeah, if you have expectations of what it is that you want, but the other person is not sharing where they're at or what they would like or what they can do, it really makes it hard to have that relationship go anywhere, right? And
Right.
I truly think, especially when you're at church, like you are in relationship with all these people that you
Yes.
go to church with. Like we
Hmm.
have a relationship. It's just what kind of relationship do
Right.
we have? Do we have a
Exactly.
healthy relationship? Do we have a safe relationship? Do we have a strained or a distant relationship? And the only way to be able to know what that relationship is to be able to have these conversations.
Right.
So I also have a question about this, and this is just something more of a newer thing that I have kind of seen: discipleship and what that looks like in bigger churches. Pastors or leaders following people on social media or watching them every day, but not necessarily being in relationship. And I just don't think that social media should replace relationship or discipleship.
Sure.
And so I'm just curious as to like what you would say about that. And
First, your primary voice should always be Jesus.
yeah.
So you definitely need to be in the Word. And again, I mean, I can't say this enough. Like
Mm-hmm.
people sometimes ask me about a specific situation or a conflict, then I'll always bring them back to the Word.
Yep.
You need to lead people back to the Word
Yeah.
whenever it comes. But you also need to be a person that knows the Word. So you shouldn't look to just that one person, your senior pastor or whoever's on the pulpit that Sunday, to give you the only word that you receive. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so pro church because
Yeah.
I love the body and I love the kingdom, and when we speak into churches, that's what we do. So it's like we want to just come and bring and add to whatever is in that house.
Right.
And so again, don't put that responsibility on that one person to for everything. You have to
Mm-hmm.
figure that out for yourself. And I think that's part of the
Right.
challenge is that I think we want to go into a church like it's a dry cleaner.
Yeah.
We want them to like clean us and press us and send us out looking all good and sparkly. And then all week long, we want to look that way. And then we want to come back on Sunday and it's that person's job to do
Mm-hmm.
the thing that we're supposed to be doing. So yeah,
Yeah.
you should be in some kind of a discipleship relationship with Jesus yourself
Yeah.
before looking for someone to lead you into that place.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important, even if you are in a discipleship group. Every church has their own model. Some
Mm-hmm.
churches, they disciple by Zoom online, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
totally, for me,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is part of the strategies of the times. And you cannot just
Mm-hmm.
say, well, I'm anti this or I'm anti that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to understand that we're going to use this media as a tool to reach the community,
Right. Yeah.
that's available to us.
Right.
I feel like I've learned
Mm-hmm.
in this last season of my life
Mm-hmm.
to hear from the many voices that are out there in social media land, or
Yeah.
whatever, but not make that one person like my pastor, because that
Mm-hmm.
person's not there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, they can be a voice that speaks into you, that challenges you, that really inspires you, which
Yeah.
they do. Like, I have so many people that I well, I pick mine now. I have very specific people that I listen to and
Listen
that I
to.
watch on social media, because if you listen to just anything, first of all, it can bring you to a place of confusion,
Yeah.
and it'll draw you into shallow waters,
Yeah.
because you're going to be listening to all these voices, and you're going to form your identity on whatever this person or that person is saying. And then when you go to church, or wherever your local group is on Sunday, or
Yeah.
whatever that is, you're going to be like, having to sift through everything that you've heard all week long
Mm-hmm.
to listen to what your shepherd is saying. And
Right.
this is really important, because his primary responsibility as a shepherd is to lead you to this place, and then it's your responsibility to feed, on whatever's there,
Yeah.
and to also stay fed during the week. So then your
Yeah.
discipleship group comes in, but then your daily relationship and communication with Jesus, it should be your number one, your primary source,
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't have that, you're always going to be looking for something
Right.
that you think that one person or that one group can give you.
Right.
And this is where you can really be led into places of deception
Yeah.
and shallowness, which is not what we want from people.
Yeah.
So,
I love it. I mean, you guys heard it first and foremost from a pastor
yeah,
who has done a lot of the heavy lifting, a lot of the caring for people, the shepherding, and all of that. And at the end of the day, yeah, your walk with the Lord is your responsibility.
absolutely.
And, I think as a Christian therapist, I actually heard a TikTok that said a lot of times when people come to therapy, they're asking for a therapist to disciple them. And luckily I do have a Christian lens, but I do always point them back to the word. I do point them back to, do you hear God for yourself?
Yeah,
And making sure that you're around other people that also are hearing from the Lord, so that they can confirm,
yeah,
that you are moving in the right direction. Because there are some unhealthy expectations that we do have about churches and pastors.
yep,
Pastors are just people too, right? And I think that there is so much responsibility that we do put on pastors. And there is the fivefold ministry, which like
right,
we will start talking more about,
absolutely.
because I don't know that a lot of churches are actually operating within those five different, houses. And so I think that that's important as well, because we have prophets and
Yeah. You
apostles,
have apostles,
evangelists.
prophets,
Hmm.
you have pastors, evangelists, and teachers. I don't know
Right.
if it's that in that correct order, but
Yep.
basically, some of the challenge that I've seen, especially now that I'm kind of like in a different space,
Hmm.
is that you put all of your, kind of your eggs in one basket. And so you
Yes.
expect the person that's on the staff that may be an evangelist to be your pastor. And that person doesn't have the spiritual makeup, or the capacity
Yeah.
to lead you into that place of pastoring. So that
Right.
person might be like, yeah, 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 you're going to be fine. Let's go witness. And
Yeah.
so this is where you might get frustrated, because you're like, what do you mean go witness? Can't you hear what I'm hurting? It's not. And so this is where you kind of have to know what
Hmm.
these roles are. So read them in
Totally.
Ephesians 5,
So important.
and then really do your own work, and, in the local church, or in your whatever ministry you're involved in. And once you read what the different, the responsibilities are of these people that are part of the kingdom, part of the local body, then you can kind of see the pastor, oh, he's more an apostolic person. He's charged with building, with this and that. Or this person's more prophetic, and they're charged with hearing from the Lord, like releasing the word of God, like bringing strategy, bringing revelation, and so on and so forth. So anyways,
Yeah.
so then that way, yeah, and we're all supposed to care for each other. So we're all
Totally.
pastoral in one
We're
sense
all
or
royal
another.
priests.
We're
Yeah.
all in the priesthood. But at the same time, like when you see a person has more of one bent toward the other, like then you
Yeah.
don't expect the prophet to pastor you,
Right.
because that prophet's gonna like listen to you for a minute, and they're gonna prophesy and challenge you and direct you, and, and then lead you on. You know what I'm saying? They're not gonna be
Yeah.
like, okay, no, then, okay, So this is where, again, going back to expectation.
Yeah.
But I think, the reality is, I think, I hate the term like microwave mentality, because this really is I don't like that, because we're all on a marathon. Like,
Yeah.
this journey of life is from the beginning to the end. But I think this is part of the problem, not only from those that come into the church, like, that's have this expectation, but also from those that are in leadership down to the people. Like right away, you want to throw them into ministry and go serve here and go do this and go do that. And you realize that the person's not really even in a healthy space,
Yeah.
but they start serving. Then they
Yeah.
find their identity in what they do. And then they get hurt because they feel used and abused
Yeah.
and moved on when the next new person comes in. And so
Yeah.
this is really, really
Tough.
like, again,
Yeah.
our responsibility, your individual responsibility, but also the responsibility of the leadership.
That's so
And
good.
that's why you're counseling so many people that are wounded and hurt and disappointed. And some people that
Yeah.
work in churches get disappointed because, oh, I don't make as much money as that one does, or
Yeah.
you hear what your sister's making or her bonuses and all stuff, and you're like, man, like what am I doing wrong? Like I'm serving the Lord. But that also comes back to expectation. You understand? Because it's like
Yeah.
you put that expectation on that one person to provide for your needs
Yeah.
when they are not Jehovah Jireh. They're not God, your provider.
Yeah.
And so you've got to really, really get yourself in a place where you have
Yeah.
a healthy expectation
Yeah.
of
Where you're at and what you need.
yeah,
And I think a big part of that too is like you said, you started out by saying it's okay to have expectations of the leadership and all of that, but you have to know yourself, right?
yes,
You have to say, well, what is it that I'm needing in this season of my life? I realized for me in this last season, I was like, I need people that are going to nurture me. I need people that are going to just be tender with me and nurture me and just sit with me and where I'm at right now. And also to call out the calling that God is moving me into, right? I'm not in a place where I can just keep serving and go and just move right along. That's not where I'm at right now,
right,
right? And so I had to sit with myself and just go, okay, well then what is it that where am I at right now? And hearing from Holy Spirit, it's not that I don't want to be a team player. It's not that I don't want to, it's not any of that. I just need different type of care right now. And I had to know that about myself. And then also when you talk reconciliation as well, it's also like reconciling with, hey, maybe I had some high expectations, or maybe I wasn't communicating well, or maybe this, maybe
right.
that, right? But acknowledging like that there was this like going
Mm-hmm.
from a church that I was a little bit different taken care of and had different level of care and access like to a different setting, just kind of understanding there's different seasons and different spaces,
Right,
but God is still using you in all of that. And then also like God will put you in situations not only for you to change it but for it to change you.
right,
And I felt like I had to go through a season of being so uncomfortable so that I wouldn't stay stuck. I feel like if we go into places where we're thriving all the time and everything feels great, we can get stuck in that place. And we do sometimes have to go through seasons of just absolute discomfort to get us to a deeper level of our prayer life and to really just continually seeking God even more so. Um,
yeah. Well, then I think that even as you do that, like you're going to start to understand your identity even more,
mhm.
because one thing that I know about myself, this is really, really important because I am not your evangelist lady. Like that is not who I am. So if you come to me and you want me to nurture and sharpen you, I'm definitely that person. And I'll come visit you if you're sick, that kind of thing. Like I'm a little bit that way, you know what I mean? Like because I have that thread of me because I'm very nurturing and I'm very mothering. But if you want to go out and reach the people on the lost, I'm going to find somebody and I'm going to say, you know what? You are an evangelist. And I'll say, what you need to do is connect with this person. And I will move you on, not because I don't care about you, because I don't love you, but because I know who I am. And I am not going to take you down to evangelize on Fremont or
That's right.
wherever you evangelize.
That's right.
That's not who I am.
That's right.
Why would I do something that I know that I'm not called to do?
Right.
And if I do that, I'm putting myself in a position and I'm also robbing that person that is the evangelist,
That's
that
good.
person that's going to lead you there. And so
Right.
that's also something that I think that when you start to like figure that out about yourself,
Yeah.
then you won't feel the rejection of like, well, she doesn't want to take me out on the street. No, I'm not going to take you out because that's not who I am.
I'm not going
Not because
either.
not because I don't love you. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, like
Yeah.
as a general statement. So I think this is also part of like, this is your journey and you
Yeah.
got to know who you are.
That's good.
And if you don't know who you are, then you need to spend some time with the Lord and really work through that
That's good. That's
process. So,
good. That's so good. No, I think that, yeah, I mean, if you don't know who you are, then other people will try to tell you,
yeah,
right? If you go into any type of situation, relationship, whether it's a church relationship or even a dating relationship,
right.
if you don't know who you are, the people around you will tell you that.
Yeah,
And sometimes there is a time of isolation before elevation and just really sitting with God, asking Him, and then also like asking Him to bring the people around you that will help bring you to that next level.
yeah,
Um, I know that you talked about being more apostolic, and I wanted you to share more about that because
sure.
again, not a lot of churches operate with those five different,
Right.
fivefold ministry. But say more about that, and also like what that looks like in the sense that you don't really fit into the
Sure.
four walls. Because with the church that I grew up at, I always felt like I had one foot in the house and then one foot in career. And I always felt like that was a little awkward in the sense that I'm not in full-time ministry. I'm not at all three services because I'm going to school, getting my master's degree and seeing clients.
Right.
And so there was sometimes this messaging of like, well, you're not all in or you're not all sold out. And I'm like, this
No.
is my ministry. Like, seeing clients is my ministry. And
Yes.
I want to serve. I'm still a part of the church. I just may not be in the four walls. So
Sure.
say more about that.
Yeah, so basically, I have four children and I have many spiritual children. And even I've learned this with my natural children, but also with my spiritual kids. You start to grow and you watch your children growing. You treat your 2-year-old different than you treat your 10-year-old. Then you treat your 15-year-old different than you treat your 10-year-old and your 2-year-old, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Right? And you would never see yourself like putting your 15 or your 20-year-old child into a stroller
Mm-hmm.
and pushing the stroller around with your big old kid, giving him his binky. You know what I mean? And sometimes I think this is the challenge because as believers or as people in the ministry, we see our spiritual children, our disciples growing, and we don't have a sense of knowing how to release them into ministry or into their
Mm,
next season. And so
yeah.
we keep them in the stroller and we say, "You're okay as long as you stay in the stroller. Here's your binky," and then your big kid wants to go out into the mission field or wants to go out and start their own ministry or go to college and do
Yeah.
their own thing. You're like,
Right.
"Oh, I'm not too sure." Like, and this is really a challenge for me
Wow.
because what
Yeah.
I realized as I was growing, reach, reconcile, raise, whatever it is, I was growing in the Lord. Then, I started to kind of mature, but I felt like I was still in the stroller. And
Wow.
for some, and this is not a dig or anything against my former leaders because they were
No.
amazing. I mean, for the
Right.
many years that I
Yeah.
grew up under their leadership, not only my senior leaders, but everybody in the ministry, because I had many, many people that were discipling me and that were raising, that were helping me to get raised and to get to a healthy place. And I mean, in addition to my job at the church, I was in therapy regularly, and so I had many people that challenged me, along with my, very strong friendships. And so, started happening is I started, realizing that I'm changing and I'm
Mm-hmm.
growing, and the container that I was in didn't really have the ability to release me into this greater place. And so,
Wow.
what I
Yeah.
was doing is, because of my unhealed, parenting issues and so on, or mother father issues, I was trying to do it all. And
Mm.
so I was continuing my full-time job and
Wow.
ministry,
Mm.
and I was going out and doing the thing that the Lord had called me to do. And this caused like such a it caused many issues on many different situations, not only for me personally, physically in my health,
Mm-hmm.
in my family, uh, because if you can imagine trying to work like 3 full-time jobs, when do you really take care, number one, of your relationship with the Lord? I'm talking about myself personally. This is not against anybody, of my, relationship with my husband, with my
Mm-hmm.
family.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, everything else that I was doing. So
Yeah.
my systems of balance were all out of whack
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Not only was I not taking a rest, my
Mm-hmm.
Sabbath. I was didn't even understand what the Sabbath was, which is very important for all of us, um, to take the one day of rest and really just be with the Lord and be refreshed and refilled. So it wasn't so much about that, but I think that I was so full of fear and really stretching out and becoming who God had called me to be, that I was kind of I was in a pressure cooker that I had created myself. You
Mm-hmm.
understand?
Yeah.
And so I realized at some point that I couldn't do it all. And my husband was constantly challenging me. And we had started, so we were doing all this ministry, we were traveling, and we were doing our jobs and trying to, juggle the family things here and there. But I realized that I was changing. And at some point, God was speaking to me in such a strong way that I couldn't get away from the voice of God, even in my
Mm.
sleep.
Wow.
And so the Lord was giving me dreams about, launching and being sent out. And so these, this is when, like, you're hearing from the Lord all the time, but when you're dreaming and God is really speaking to you, there's almost a point in your life where you cannot like deny, how much
Yeah.
God is changing you. And so we eventually had to take a leap of faith and transition out of our jobs. And as we did that, um, that's really when the change started to happen, because I think that I could have stayed in that container forever
Yeah.
and probably could still be there. But then if I would have done that, I would have never developed to this place that I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember, just backing up just a little bit, my husband and I had pretty much known for about 2 or 3 years that we had to go,
Mm.
because we had changed so much
Right.
that we were trying to do all the things
Yep.
and be developing in the apostolic and in the prophetic. We had a really courageous pastor that we were under at our church, that so courageous, that was teaching us the voice of God, had really been, really cutting edge in that, in this community, for a woman to lead and to really stick her neck out. Like, I really just always give her props, because I'm like, not only was she doing all of this, was she's trying to develop and then develop herself and then raise all of us, uh, you know,
Yeah.
novices really in
Right.
this place. And so I had this dream in
Mm.
2019. So we were about 3 years into this journey where my husband and I were going back and forth with the Lord. And then finally, we were in Armenia doing ministry. And I had this encounter with God where,
Mm.
again, the Lord was telling us, you're not, you're a new person. Like, you're this. And again, I was like, listening to one other voice at that season in my life, Apostle Chuck Pierce from Glory of Zion, who is now my covering, my apostle, and the person that, we align with at fully. We're on his team, and, everything's amazing. But in that season, I was kind of got my foot in that camp and my foot in this other camp. And we were in ministry in Armenia, and I had this
Wow.
encounter with God. And like, the apostle there, the bishop, prayed for us. And I remember, the Lord just kind of ministering to me in this moment. And I didn't want to come out of that place of like encounter with God. But the Lord was telling me, like, you have to do what I'm calling you to do.
Mm.
And I was like, I'm having this conversation with the Lord. And I'm like, I know. And the Lord was like, no, like, you have to. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I get it. And the Lord was like, when you do this, it's going to cost you everything.
Wow.
And I remember just that moment of like revelation where I was like, nothing else matters but being obedient to what you're calling me to do.
Yeah.
And so I went to my husband after that meeting. He was waiting for me. I went to him, and I remember being overwhelmed, and I got on I fell on my knees in front of my husband, because I recognized, like, I've been in such disobedience, not only to the Lord, but to him, because my husband had been trying to challenge us into this place. And I really was so stuck in fear and, idolatry and all this stuff that I can't even explain fully in this brief moment. But, I'm saying this because I feel like maybe this is you. Maybe the God's been speaking to you, and
Mm.
maybe you're in this place where you just don't know what to do next. And really, the number one thing you have to remember is that when you take that leap of faith in this
Mm.
place where you step out into this unknown, like, a lot of people think that before you step out, you got to have like, oh, your 3 year and your 5 year plan and all the steps figured out, and
Mm.
everything's got to fit in, and all the loose ends got to tuck in. But if you did that, wouldn't really be faith. It
Right.
would still be you depending on you depending on your plan and on your strategy that you can do. We can all do strategy, right? But I think that the Lord calls you into the deep and into the unknown. And sometimes you just got to step out, And I remember that day that I was like, I'm doing it no matter what. I remember just crying out to God. And I literally was overwhelmed, and I fell on my knees. And my husband was there with the bishop and whoever. I don't even remember who was in the room. I didn't really care. And I said to my husband, I'm hearing from God, and I can no longer be in disobedience. And so I remember
Mm.
we prayed, and they gathered around us and they prayed. And I felt like the word that came forth was like we were in this Noah moment, like Noah was called by the Lord to do something, even though around him, the circumstances, there was no storm and
Mm-hmm.
there was ridicule around him, but he knew that he knew that he knew
Yeah.
that God had called me to do this thing, and he started doing it at the cost of everything, right? And so this was us in that moment. Like
Mm.
we knew that we knew that we knew, and we did it. And so the next year, then, COVID happened, and then everything changed. And there came this point in time, a few months after that, where I told my husband, I have to do this. I'm dying inside. And we just started really like stepping into this place of the unknown. And
Mm.
so the next day after we made this decision in Armenia, I remember
Mm.
we were at this hotel having breakfast. One of the people that goes to the church that we were at was there serving in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
and he came out and he put on this playlist, and this ocean song comes on. Of course, we all know this ocean song
Love
is like,
that song. Yeah.
lead me to the bit. I'm like,
Yeah.
so in that moment, I'm eating breakfast, and then I hear this song, like the echo, the music when you're at a restaurant,
Mm.
and the echo of the song is in the back of my head. And I remember just having like food in my throat, and I couldn't even swallow. And I literally
Mm.
like was chewing, and I started crying. And I told Pasquale, I said, can we get to this place in our life where we are led by God 100%, and into this place of, the song of the unknown, where you're like not even sure, but when you step out, God's going to be
Yeah.
there.
My trust without borders.
Yeah, and so we literally like made that commitment, and this
Mm-hmm.
is really the journey that you may find yourself on, because
Mm-hmm.
we recognize that God had changed us so much, and this development of the prophetic and the apostolic mantle that was on our lives was so undeniable. Like my husband has is so apostolic that even though he's a great pastor, my husband is, he has started so many things in this community. Like my husband has a great reputation. Pasquale Urrabazo, like he's got a name. Like I ran into this random person in Henderson who was blowing a shofar and prophesying over people at the hospital. And when I told him who my husband was, he goes, "Oh, your husband is a man of good reputation in the city,
Oh.
and he has a good name." And I literally, like, I recognize that this apostolic mantle has always been on him,
Yeah.
and but he can lean to be more pastoral.
Yeah.
And so for me, I had developed into this, but I was denying it because I was so full of fear. And
Yeah.
then then the moment that we stepped out and started launching into the deep, into our own ministry, really, that's when our place of where he talked about the reach, reconcile, all that, like, started. It's like this cycle of that started all over again
Mm-hmm.
in our lives, and we had to develop into this new thing. And so we were in Las Vegas trying to develop, but the Lord was calling us to move to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved to Texas for many reasons, mainly because God told us to, not because I really wanted to leave my family. And in that place, launching another place of the deep, which was about a less than a year after we left the first time. But it became so much easier
Yeah.
as we did the first leap. Now we're doing another leap.
Mm.
And I asked the Lord about that, and I remember the Lord told me, seek me for fresh manna every day.
Love that.
And I said to the Lord, fresh manna, that's awesome. Like, that means you're always going to be my provider, because we think about manna as, the quail that, or the bread that was dropped, and then the quail, and we think about manna as that provision that satiates us, that satisfies us, our natural needs. Like, oh, my bills are going to be this. What I said to the Lord, you're always going to pay my bills, God. I'm always going to have food to eat. Like, I need more. And so I said to the Lord, like, I said, God, you're always going to meet my needs. And the Lord corrected me in that moment. And he said, but that kind of natural provision is the lowest form of manna that I'm going
Wow.
to give you. And so
Wow.
I'm in this dialogue with the Lord, and I said, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord said, fresh manna is fresh anointing,
Mm.
fresh revelation, fresh expectation, fresh oil from heaven, like this dreams and
Yeah.
revelation. So when I recognize that manna is more than just my natural needs here on earth, that really it is this thing that's going to satisfy
Mm-hmm.
every part of my being.
Yeah.
That's really what I want from the Lord
Yeah.
every day. And
Love
so
that.
this thing developed into us moving to Texas, and then we were there now under the covering of our apostle Chuck Pierce, and being in this house where you're not there to be ministered or pastored. You're there to be sharpened, to grow, to let your wings expand, to let that part of you that that mantle that's on your life, whether you're an apostle, a pastor,
Hmm.
an apostle, a prophet, a pastor, whatever you are, like that thing is encouraged.
Yeah.
This really where we really started to see this mantle that we had been carrying that really we weren't really too sure about develop.
Yeah.
One time, our apostle Chuck asked us to write out all the stuff that we had done, and so we did all this. I remember taking a whole week to write this, all the things that you think validate you. And I remember we had this meeting with him, and he took that list of all the things that we had done, and he didn't even read it. He put it aside on his desk, and he said, let's hear what God is doing now.
Love
And I was like,
that.
whoa.
That's
And so
so
then
good.
when you have to get to that place where somebody asks you, what do
Mm.
you think you are? What is your primary gift? And you have to actually say, I'm I'm a prophet. It really is a challenging thing because you got to get over all of these
Yeah.
mindsets, poverty mindsets, religious mindsets, and all the whatever things from the past that you have to kind of put aside and say, no, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Because when I see myself in the area of how God has created me, this is how I am. And to deny that is to deny the work of God and the creation and all the things that he says about us in Psalms 139. It's like
Yeah.
to deny who you are, it is to deny what
Word.
God says about you.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you're supposed to run around calling yourself an apostle and a prophet, because if anybody that knows me knows that that's not who I am and that is not what I do. But to know this about myself is
Yeah.
so important. So I know I went all around
Hmm.
trying to answer your question, but
Yeah.
this embracing of this mantle in my life has been so key. It has
Hmm.
not only taught me how to step into the timing of the Lord and into that place of revelation, even though sometimes it may not make sense in the natural, but knowing that is so key that I step into that and that place opens greater doors
Yeah.
and greater doors and greater doors until the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
But that's how we're all created to live.
Right.
And I think a lot of times we minimize ourselves into the container of whatever that is. I'm not anti-church, but into the container of whatever that local church is, and we deny really what God has called us
Yeah.
to walk out.
Yeah.
So
I love that. That's
it's a long answer.
no,
Sorry.
I love it. I mean, it's beautiful. It's just a full circle moment. And I think you talk a lot about just the fear, that you have to do in order
Yeah.
to really trust God with
Yeah.
everything. And it's going to cost you everything. And just Him really like pursuing you in that process and you having to overcome like so many
Totally.
things and even disappointing people, walking away from
Girl.
opportunities, all of that. And it is tough because I will say, even just like in therapy, when people are growing, there are certain people that honestly like the unhealed version of you, that
Better.
like, yeah, or like the version of you that had no boundaries, the version of you that never said no. They're like, I like that version of you better. But God is going to meet you where you're at, but He doesn't want you to stay there.
And not everybody is gonna go along in
That's
your
right.
journey.
That's right.
You talk about that, and it just brings to mind like
Mm.
that book of Ruth, and it's like
Hmm.
they were in this season of famine, right? That's why they ended up moving to Moab, and then in the season of loss and famine, and then when Naomi decides to take the girls, back to the place of her birth, the place where the plenty had come back, and and she's going back to her place, and they are at that intersection in the book of Ruth, and she has that moment where she's still in this place of desperation, and she
Mm.
tells the daughters like, you don't have to come with me, and they have to each make a choice.
Yeah.
And I love to preach out of that.
Yeah.
The whole book is awesome, not just chapter 1 that tells you all the drama and all the stuff, but as you go even into chapter 4 and see the promise fulfilled, and then so on and so forth. But I mean, being in that moment of intersection, and you really start to see like not everybody is going to be in that place where they go into that place of fulfillment or victory or the celebration. It's like some people are going to be at the crossroads with you, and then they're going to say, I can't go. I have to go back to Moab. I have to go back to my people. And you have to be okay with that. But it's really important to see that in that scripture, Naomi herself still sees herself with a famine mindset, still
Mm.
sees herself in a bitter place, in a place of bitterness, in a place of woundedness, and in a place of hurt. And you're right. Some people are just only going to see you that way
That's right.
and be comfortable with you in that way. But then you're going to have the roots in your life where they're going to see something in you as you're developing and see something in you through the process, and then they're going to say, you know what, I've seen you through the hard seasons and I'm with you. And like she says,
Yeah. Where you go,
I'm
I
going to go
go.
where you're going
Your
to
people are
go.
my
My
people.
people, you're God, my God, and
That's
wherever
right.
exactly. So some people are going to go into the place of promise with you, and some people are not. And
Yeah.
you have to be okay in your identity, in what God has called you to be, and being obedient to the Lord
Yeah.
to say, I love you anyways. And
Anyways,
this is
yeah.
really a hard thing for a person who's been in leadership to, like, when we left, like there was people that called us out, you're running from your call, you're running, I mean, just I can just go on and on and on with the people. Some people just detach. Well, I guess this is where our friendship ends. I'm not even kidding you. People that I thought were my lifers were like, bye, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And some people don't have the capacity to say goodbye to you. They don't have capacity to say goodbye to you in a healthy way. Sometimes you have going back to an expectation that certain people are going to be, here, here, here. And then when you see them, the root of rejection can just rise up inside of you. So you really, really have to be comfortable
Yeah.
and confident and knowing
Yep.
who you are, knowing
Yep.
that God's called you,
That's right.
that you're walking out the call of God in your life,
Yeah.
and also that you're going to bless the people that decide to
That's
go
right.
in their own way, and that they're not the devil, and
No.
they're not, whatever,
Because
haters or
because
whatever.
sometimes visions kill visions too, right? And it's okay that what they are doing is what maybe what God's asking them to do, right?
Yes.
God gave you the vision. Your call wasn't a conference call, and I think that that is a big part of that maturity, right? Like we have to shed any type of idols in our lives. Sometimes relationships can be our idols, right?
Yes.
And we want that approval. I think sometimes too what I had seen in our church at times, right, where we're looking for that releasing part. They want this approval from pastor, right, and they're just like, please tell me that I'm heading in the right direction. And sometimes they wouldn't get that, and there was a lot of hurt and sadness in that.
Yeah.
And it's okay, like you are called to listen to and submit to the Father in heaven, and so people may not get it.
Sure. And I think, again, like sometimes you put so much expectation on that one person to tell
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
It is really an idolatry mindset.
it
And
is.
honestly, like, no offense to any Catholics, because most of my family is still Catholic. I grew up in a Catholic church. And in the Catholic church, the idolatry is very clear because you see the actual idols.
Yeah.
And in the Christian culture, it's not that clear because you don't see that on the pulpit, but
No.
you create that if you have that need.
Totally.
And so I think that, again, that goes back to your expectation. And sometimes your
Yeah.
expectations are so unrealistic, and you put that person up on the pedestal and you idolize that person. And then really, this is something that this is a need thing. You're going to have to uproot that. You're going to
Totally.
have to uproot that rejection.
Yep.
You're going to have to uproot that orphan mindset,
Yep.
that all those things that I can just go on and
Yeah,
on and
yeah,
on
yeah, yeah,
about.
yeah.
But I think that recognizing that when you are in that place where God is shifting you,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay if not everybody comes along.
That's right.
And that's not because you're a bad person, and it's not even because they're a bad person.
No.
It could just be because they are in a different place,
Yeah.
or maybe they don't have that capacity, like I said,
Yeah.
to transition or detach from relationships in a healthy way. Maybe they have attachment. Like, you can talk about all that all day, like the attachment issues. I've heard
Attachment.
you talk about that before.
Yeah.
But this is
Like
true
that's
because we
okay.
bring that into our Christian relationships, and
Yeah.
then we get so hurt and disappointed, and we go from church to church because we're looking for that one person or this group of people to meet those needs that can really, really, really only be met
By the Lord.
by the Lord.
I have so many like kingdom family all over, which I think is so amazing because it's like they are from different churches, like different, and it's just beautiful to realize that we are the kingdom, we are the church.
Yeah.
And, visions kill visions. And I think that that's so important, that realizing that, yeah, God might have this person in a specific place in a specific season. And what God is having them do might be in complete contradiction to what God's asking you to do, right? Like you might be in a season where God's telling you to speak more and he might be telling them, listen more, right? And it might be where it's conflicting and there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to go, okay, and I love you and I have to keep moving. And who knows, like, if time, down the road, if like that is supposed to come back together, that's great. And if not, that's also okay because there's people that you're called to speak
Absolutely.
to. And so you can't get hung up on one specific place. I saw a video where it said like, some places you're just passing through and it might just have just been an assignment just to keep moving through and continue to stay open and loving and kind. And I think that that's a big, big thing that people get afraid of is, well, what are people going to think about me? But as I do specialize in narcissistic and spiritual abuse, how I like to define narcissism is being more worried about what people think about you than
Yeah.
what God thinks about you. because we're just trying to manage our image. We're just
Right.
trying, and I can even attest to that there have been times where I've been worried about, I don't want you to think these bad things. Like, I'm not trying to hurt you. I don't want you to think that. Trying to manage. And at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
I'm not responsible for how they perceive me, how they experience me. If they feel some type of way, like, that is their responsibility to come talk to me, and that's how the relationship will build. But if they don't, that's okay. I have to know that I've done everything on my own and I'm following God. And so I
Exactly.
think that that's the biggest part of it, is our individual personalized relationships with God. And the more that you take leaps of faith, God will continue to open the doors and reward us for our faithfulness.
Yeah, and again, go back to your word, because there's really two clear
Mm,
examples that are coming to my mind right now as you talk about that. And that is, the Apostle Peter, and also separately the Apostle Paul. It's like, if you can see the progression of the life of a person from so many viewpoints, uh, you know, the clear example that is in the word for us, and how they managed to transition from season to season to season, and then at the end they were victorious. You know what I mean? So it's kind of
yeah.
like, I'm not trying to over spiritualize that, but this is just to give you an example of like what has already been set before us.
Yeah.
And somehow we expect perfection, whether it's in our lives or in the lives of our leaders. And the reality is, we're not. Nobody
No.
is.
No.
And so these peaks and valleys are going to be part of our David. Like, I mean, gosh, like Elijah. I mean, oh my gosh, there's so many examples in the word, like Joseph. Like, my God, I mean, I can just go on and on, but it's like the progression of your walk with the Lord, your journey with Jesus is so ever changing. So you
Hmm.
cannot just think that one vision is forever. Like, there's visions that are going to transcend like generation to generation, but you need to be open and willing, not only to allow the Lord to continue to create in you and bring you to that place of newness and that freshness, but also to allow other people to be human and to be real, and to
Yeah.
allow the Lord to do the work that He's doing in you to also do it in them.
Totally. Yeah. No, I love that. And I definitely think the more that we ask God to show us people the way He sees them, I feel like that's the best way that we can go about just continuing to love
Yes.
and continually to releasing offense and managing expectations and all of that. We all fall into that, right? And I think we come from that based on our background, our trauma, all these different things, which is super important to just do your own healing work, because that's also how the enemy gets a foothold, is through, any type of open door, trauma, offense. And so we have to constantly be checking our hearts. And like, that's why we
Yes.
have to submit that daily, and, just asking Him to renew us daily. And we're not the same as we were, last week. We're continually
Woohoo!
growing as we should, right? As believers. And so I really appreciate you just being
Yeah.
on here with me today and
Absolutely.
just
Anytime.
sharing so many gold nuggets and so many gems. And I'm just so grateful for your presence in my life. And your voice
I'm so
has
proud of you.
Thank you. Your voice has been so, so powerful and honestly very grounding for me in this season of my life, and just giving me a lot of just direction and honestly confidence that I needed. I
Hmm.
was definitely in a season of just needing someone to look at me and be like, "You're not crazy." Because I felt like it. But it was really, really just beautiful, just the way that you have just been able to come alongside and support and just,
Yeah.
remind me of like who I am in Christ. And
Absolutely.
I just really am so grateful for
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love you.
Love you
I'm very proud
too.
of you. And
Thank you.
again, like watching, you grow and really become this person where your voice is heard and really released into these new places has really been beautiful for me. So,
Oh,
yeah.
thank you. I appreciate you. Oh, I love you. Well, you guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you want Norma back, please write in the comments below, because clearly, she's got so much to share. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Drop in the comments below. What were some big takeaways? What
Yeah.
were some challenges that you really feel you were able to get out of this episode? And then I will see you guys in the next episode.